The views and opinions heard on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of the host.
There had to be someone, not something, because things wear out, second law of thermodynamics. There had to be someone without beginning or end who had the power and the knowledge, the wisdom, the incredible, infinite intelligence to put all this together, from the organization of the atom to the cosmos and so forth.
When we look at the many examples of God's power, it should invoke a sense of reverence and awe in our hearts.
Truly, our Creator is the God of wonders, and the greatest wonder is His immeasurable love.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I'm your host, Lamont Gates, where we highlight faith, metaphysicalism, and spirituality. Today, as we continue with our series of near-death experience accounts, Real Spiritual Talk Radio goes across the Atlantic to bring forth an experiencer who learned a lot about existence. Let's get it started. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me via Skype is near-death experiencer and psychologist Debbie Butler. Debbie, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thank you, Lamont. It's great to be here.
So I understand that beyond having a near-death experience, you also research and teach on the subject of near-death experiences, yes?
Yes. Really, we're all scared of death. We are finite beings. We will all die. None of us is getting out of this alive. And most people do not know what will happen to them. So there's fear. And there's also hope. You know, they hope that certain things will happen to them. You know, so I coach people to understand what life is really, rather than what death is, because, you know, until you die, you cannot possibly know what death is.
Indeed, and many would love to hear those insights. But before we even get into that, before we even get into your experience, let's go back. Let us know exactly what it was that started your spiritual journey. Many people start off as children, being taught something of a religious nature. What was yours?
If I start on pivotal moments in my life, that might help. My first pivotal moment was watching my sister, who was 3 years old, run under a truck. I was 5 years old. So, you know, from a 5-year-old's perspective, 1 minute this person was there, and because the truck completely obliterated her, the next minute this person was not there. So it leaves you with a huge amount of trauma and a very confused
state of mind, I'd say.
Perfect. So life went on, and when I was about a year later, I took myself to the local Baptist church. My parents weren't spiritual, but I thought, you know, as a 6-year-old, you're kind of confused and you want to get to the bottom of what's really going on. You know, I knew I would die. I became a very difficult child. That's because massive trauma, PTSD, all that kind of stuff.
So you'd say that the death of your sister at age 3 is what led to your PTSD?
Yes, it did. I mean, for many, many years, I totally obliterated it from my conscious mind because I couldn't deal with it. One of my friends who was conversant he worked with the child soldiers. He said, losing your sibling like that and watching the sibling die, feeling that it's your own fault, is a similar thing to what happened in Africa with the Tutsis, you know, all that stuff.
Now, with your PTSD, which obviously can't be cured and can only be managed, how did this affect your life going forward?
Angry. You get angry. You see someone die you love and you get angry. I would defy anybody to not get angry because that's kind of what it does to you. So I lived lived my life very much confused. Did lots of stupid things, self-sabotaging things, because that's what you tend to do when you have trauma that you can't face. Anyway, I eventually got married and got pregnant, and that's kind of when I had my NDE, my near-death experience.
Got it. So what was it that actually led to your near-death experience?
I was 8 months pregnant. I went to the doctors and said, look, I've got a bit of a pain in my chest. Can you just give me something? And the doctor said, how did you get here? I said, well, I drove. And the doctor said, very slowly, very carefully, drive back and get in your night clothes and just stay calm, stay very calm, because we're sending an ambulance for you. I wasn't aware, but at that time I was in the middle of having a pulmonary embolism, which is where you get a blood clot in your heart, and it dislodges and it sticks in your lungs, and it basically stops you from breathing properly. Which is quite ironic, really, at the moment with the coronavirus thing, because it's a very similar situation in a way. So I was taken to hospital in the ambulance, put into the heart and lung ward. They didn't expect me to survive. They did no medical intervention because they told my husband that your wife's got a pulmonary embolism. She has 0 chance of survival. Do you want us to save the baby? And thank goodness my husband said, I don't know the baby, try and save my wife. So what happened is, because they could do no intervention, they did nothing. And they just put me in the bed next to the nurse's station with the curtains round and just waited for time to do its work.
And what exactly would you say was going through your mind at this particular point?
Nothing at all. When you are that ill, all I was thinking about was breathing. The only focus of all my attention was on being able to breathe. That was it. And there is nothing outside of that. It's just breathe, breathe, breathe.
So at some point, did you flatline? If so, what happened next?
Well, before I actually died, I was in incredible pain, undescribable pain. If for a woman, she'll understand what childbirth is like. If she's had a child, it's worse than childbirth. They had me on a heart monitor and on a brain monitor because they were just checking out whether I get oxygen to my brain and all that stuff.
Were you actually pronounced clinically dead?
I was clinically dead, yes.
Okay, now how did your experience begin?
So when I died, the first thing I experienced was peace. I was no longer in pain. There was no more pain. That was the most profound thing I could possibly imagine. I didn't feel that I was floating, but I saw images of my body from above my body. And I was looking down onto my body, and it was sort of no emotion, nothing. Just, oh, okay. And I saw nurses coming around and everything. And I sort of lifted up about 6 feet above my body. And there was a wardrobe next to my bed where they kept medical supplies, because I was on the bed that they put you on when you're going to die. And on top of the wardrobe was a pair of scissors. The only thing that came across my mind was, what are they there for? What are they doing there? Why have they got scissors on top of the wardrobe? It seemed ridiculous to me. So I found out what the scissors were for later. But so then I went to a dark place. I went to peace and darkness, just bliss.
Would you say this was the dark, peaceful void that many others describe going to?
Many people describe it as the void, and I think that's a very good description. Very good. I think this is my perception. I think we take with us our sensation as we died, because I was in such pain before I died. I had such a perception of peace because the pain has ceased. I just felt there. I can't just, if you can imagine having no weight, no body, you just exist.
Now, many people say that their consciousness is clearly there and that they feel as light as a feather, and going back into their bodies would be like putting on heavy full body armor. Is that a fair description?
Very, very fair. Very, very fair.
Now, did you remain in the void or did you move into a different location?
It's fairly classic. I saw like a white light. I was aware of, rather than seeing, I was aware of a white light, a warm light, a warm glow. And I felt that I was drawn towards it. I wasn't moving willingly. I wasn't resisting. I just was drawn into it. And so I got into this sort of light. And as I got closer, I heard what sounded like singing. It sounded like beautiful, angelic singing. You know, you hear this in all sorts of cultures, that there's this, it's the only way I can describe it. I'm afraid my words are inadequate.
No, I get it. I understand. It's a very ineffable experience. I've heard that the music there is so unearthly that the greatest symphonies on earth couldn't even match up.
That's exactly it. And that's the first thing I experienced as I was coming into this. And the glow surrounded me. It wasn't a sudden, dark light. It was a glow that almost like a light being switched on very gently, a dimmer switch. And this light came on around me. And I was aware of, now I would call them angels, but that's only because of the perception that I grew up with. You know, I took myself to a Baptist church as a young child. So I was very into Christianity. And, you know, it's the only thing I could really
relate it to.
Exactly. And I saw all these beings that I was aware that they were entities and I was an entity the same way. And they looked like brighter lights than the background light. But the background light was also light of existence. The whole thing was existence. So light of existence. And it was almost like the front layers, they're all layers and layers and layers. Just call them souls, whatever you like. And anyway, I was in this place and it was surrounded by these light beings who were in the singing. And one of these beings came up towards me. And I have to say it's a he because I felt it was a he. And he stood on my right side. And he put his arm over my left shoulder. I can still feel it now. You know, this happened in 1982. So it's a long, long time ago. And he said, you have got to go back because this baby has got to be born. That was it, more or less. And I felt myself almost like going away from the light and being drawn back into, I guess, what was my body. And you said the weight. That's funny. The more I went into the light, the lighter I felt. Back down into my body, the heavier I felt.
Did you feel the compassion and unconditional love that many describe?
That's all it was. It was bliss and joy. I've never experienced any joy, bliss or love on this earth. I mean, I've gone to churches and all sorts of other different, just for the camaraderie, spiritual stuff. I don't need it anymore. I don't need hope. I don't have fear.
So tell us, what was it like returning to your body?
The first thing I remember was breathing. I was only aware of that breath. Now, on earth, 5 minutes had passed. And I was just aware of my breath and then the pain in my chest again. But before I came back, I had a general awareness about the understanding of existence. It's interesting. But yes, I came back and I was in my body. I felt the breath. And that was really it. I didn't have my eyes open. I felt the breath. Then I heard a lot of panic around me. And I just started to recover. In 1982, a pulmonary embolism was terminal. Very few people recovered.
Many doctors speak about having the tools today that weren't around in the past to resuscitate those who have flatlined, basically. But who's to say? I mean, was it really their tools, or was it some sort of force from the other side that brought you back?
Well, I didn't have a choice, and I didn't, some people say, oh, yes, they have a choice whether they come back or not. I wasn't given a choice. I had to come back because this child had to be born, and that was it.
Very interesting. So you're also an administrator for an near-death experience support and study group on Facebook. And I noticed on one of your posts, you were responding to someone and you stated that if you had the choice, that you wouldn't come back.
I had no awareness of my life as a human, this life as a human. I had no appreciation of it. I didn't even know that I had lived. I wouldn't have come back. I wouldn't have known what I was coming back to. And I was just existing in the moment. And it was beautiful.
What was it like trying to convey what you saw to others after you recuperated?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't tell anybody for a long time, apart from one incident that happened very strange. After I had the baby, the house doctor came round and he just said to me, "What are you doing here?" So I said, "Well, I've just had a baby, that's why." And he said, "No, but on my notes it says you're dead." And I think he was the only one I really spoke to about being dead.
Did you tell him about your experience? Many say that it's hard to speak about their experience after recently coming back.
No, which is why I started the NDE study and support group. And it's a private group. Friends and all the rest of it can't see all the stuff you're saying because it's so personal and it's so difficult to express, and you don't want them thinking you're a nutter.
Yes, many skeptics out there. So I understand that you're also a Gestalt psychologist, which deals with experiences. You're also a hypnotherapist. What do you do with hypnotherapy exactly?
I actually do past life regression.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that, very familiar. Have you yourself ever been regressed to perhaps have your near-death experience better explained to you?
No, I haven't actually. I did come back with some knowledge though, about time and space and everything. And this is kind of what I teach actually, because I have students that I teach who, outside of the psychology stuff, it's really to help people deal with their lives. Anyway, what I learned, what I brought back with me, was that we are just experience. You're not you that was 2 seconds ago. You're not you that was 2 seconds' time. You're simply experience. And when you die, does that have to end? And as well as that, all time, I saw everything as a mist. I saw time and space and everything almost like a mist, but everything touches everything else at the same time. So us now touches somebody in the 17th century. Very interesting. So once again, as I've heard many times, time is not linear. Time is not linear, yeah. I'm married to a quantum physicist, and he's like, yeah. Do you get any backlash from colleague skeptical psychologists in your field about what it is you teach or about your experience in general? Not really. I tend to work on my own because I work on this, the work that my husband and I do, which is really about, we call it new idealism. It's all about transcendental, but it's not transcendental as in the New Age stuff. It's something beyond existence.
Yeah, people very often confuse near-death experiences with New Ageism. And for some reason, I just don't understand it myself. I don't see the connection, being that one is an experience and the other is simply a philosophy.
In psychology, it's very, very well, there's a whole branch of psychologists that study NDEs. It's very, very sought after. Because the one thing as a psychologist, I get all excited now. The one thing as a psychologist that we don't know, where's consciousness? They're thinking the body's an antenna because they found that all the brain cells don't just exist in your head, they're throughout your body. There's brain cells in your heart, also all over. So maybe we are just consciousness.
In a physicalist form.
You got it, exactly. And it's lovely to read people's experiences because, when you're on your own, you feel, oh God, I'm a freak. But when you're with other people who've had similar experiences, you feel included, Well,
I want to thank you for sharing this. This is extremely valuable information. Is there anything else you'd like to tell people out there about death, dying, near-death experiences, fear, etc.?
Well, if you want to know about what I do now as a result of this, go to my website. It's really to help people get over. I've had people from all sorts of different things. When they have issues in their lives, I have people from various different traumas who cannot find a way to deal with it. They've been to see therapists, they've been to see this, they've been to see that. But to have a deep understanding of what life is. Yeah, well, it's really just understanding.
What is that website?
www.deborahbutler.eu. EU for Europe.
Okay.
My husband's got a website as well. His is martinbutler.eu.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Debbie, I thank you for joining us, and may your information go round the globe and be just as valuable to others as it has been to us.
Every expression of God is perfect, including the coronavirus. We're all perfect. Everything's perfect. It's when man comes and tries to contort us into something else. To think that there is an eternal consciousness. Death is nothing to us because we know nothing of death. When we die, it's like opening a door, closing a door.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
There you have it once again, ladies and gentlemen. Another experience clearly worth highlighting. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. This has been Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I'm your host, Lamont Gates. Join us for our next broadcast, where we will be continuing with our series of near-death experience accounts. And I don't know about you, but certainly these accounts have made me, and I hope they are making you, much more spiritually enlightened. And with that said, Real Spiritual Talk Radio is now signing off.